Hello and welcome back. This is video number 3. And this video is going to be a really quick exercise to figure out what is your audience's pain. Basically, what are their problems? What keeps them up at night? Because you really need to know this because this is going to be what drives them. If you know what drives them, you can figure out how to solve that, how to solve their pain, and how your product and service actually relates to their pain. To do this, what you're going to need to do is do some research. You basically want to figure out what are their frequently asked questions. Then you need to figure out how does their frequently asked question or their pain actually relate to your product. Now, you can find these questions in Google. You're going to have to do a little bit of research. So you're going to go to forums, you can go to Yahoo Answers. There are many different types of search engines that are surrounding answers like Yahoo Answers and Answers.com and other things like that. Really what we're trying to figure out are the most common and frequently asked questions that people are asking. So answer type sites. Let me hop on over to Google and let's do some research. Okay, so there are two different ways of going about doing this. The first way is, of course, digging up frequently asked questions, things that people are asking on forums, and things like that. The second way of doing this is simply by going to websites that are selling whatever you're trying to sell, like competitors, and most likely they're going to have a list of frequently asked questions. Now, you don't want to just right off the bat take the frequently asked questions that they've written. You kind of want to look at several sites and compare, let's say for example, the top 5, and compare them and see what actual common questions are being asked on those 5 different sites. So let's say, for example, that each site has roughly about 10 or 12 different frequently asked questions. In comparison to all those 5 together, which common questions actually are reappearing? So that can definitely help you out because they've already done the research. Now, the reason why I say do these 2 different ways is because that way you really figure out what are the frequently asked questions, because it can change over time and over the years. Different questions will change simply because the industry changes, your market changes, and you kind of want to keep up with what is the main question. And most of the time it'll stay the same, but sometimes it'll change. So what I like to do is I like to go to google.com and I'll type in, for example, this case again, greenhouse kit FAQ, and I'll look at the top sites. So right now we have, it looks like Sturdy Built Greenhouses. Amazon.com is another good place to go to, and I would specifically look at their reviews. So let's do that first. Let's look at specific sites and kind of compare the FAQs. And it would be better if you can find websites that are actually selling what you're trying to sell. So in this case, selling greenhouse kits. So looking at this, I can tell that this is not just a website that's selling a bunch of gardening stuff, it's selling greenhouses. So the FAQ here is, what is the difference between a greenhouse and a solarium? Where should I locate the greenhouse? How will snow affect my greenhouse? And stuff like that. And then I move on to the next website, which, as we can see here, got residential greenhouses, which is what I want. And there we go. And let's see if they have an FAQ somewhere. They might not, they may. Really depends. So right off the bat, it doesn't look like they have one. So if I go over to here, sometimes if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can find them. Sometimes not. Okay, technical FAQ. Okay, good. Description of different types of greenhouse structures and stuff like that. So I would basically open up these FAQs and I would just go to the next website until I found all the FAQs. I would line them up. So let's see here. Most of these are not related to greenhouse, they're just related to the company. Okay, so what I would do first is I would compare the main different sites that are related to greenhouses. And I would look at their FAQs and see what questions are actually popping up that match that of these other sites. So you see where I'm going with this? I'm trying to find some patterns here. Repeating patterns, repeating similarities are key, because that tells me that that is one of the more common questions across the board. So that's the first technique that I would use. The second technique that I would use is simply by going to Google, going to forums. I would type in the keyword, and then I would type in forum, and then I would try to find forums that are talking about this particular product or service, so I can get an idea of what their pains are. Sometimes you can do something like put the keyword or keyword phrase in quotations, and you can put a word like bad, stinks. The whole point of this is to figure out if you can find complaints, if you can find bad reviews. Complaints is really where the pain is. I mean, FAQs definitely help, but pains can be good too, because that'll tell you what's their driving motivation. What's the emotional element in the back of the motivation that is pushing them and driving them to do what they're doing. Basically all the synonyms of bad and horrible. So for example, this person here, let's see, they have one review which is negative. And it might be negative about the greenhouse kit, but a lot of times these will go across the board and tell you the repeating problems that people are having, which drives them to ask the same question, which we'll answer while we're creating the video sales letter. Why should I buy from you? Or this hasn't worked before. Why should I buy from you? And that's, if you have the answer to that question, then you're going to be ahead of most of your competition. So what I would do next is I would go to answer sites like Yahoo Answers, and I would type in the keyword greenhouse kits. And what I like about Yahoo Answers is while you're typing it, it's kind of like Google, it'll tell you the questions that actually show up. But in this case, it is more so questions. So what is the best greenhouse kit to buy? It's pretty general. Question about greenhouse kits. Greenhouse kits, are they good buys? I want to purchase a greenhouse kit. Which one would you recommend? Now, these are common questions, but you really need to figure out is how do these questions actually relate to your product and service? So if I do a quick search on this, I can start looking through here and get an idea of what common questions people have and how I can relate that to my product or service. Another thing I would do is I would go to Amazon. Amazon is a great place to go. We can type in greenhouse kits. And it's okay to look at the positive reviews, but what I would really do is focus in on the negatives. So for example, I would pick and choose a competing product or service that relates specifically to what I'm selling, because I want to get a read on what people are thinking. And generally speaking, I don't really read the positives, I read the negatives. So we got 10 negatives on this. What I'm trying to figure out is what are the patterns of complaints? What are the similar complaints? I'm not really looking for people who complain to complain. I'm looking for people who complain, like let's say for example this person here says something that's very similar to this person here, and this person here is saying something very similar to this person here. So what I'm looking for is a pattern of negative complaints, of common questions, and things like that. Once you do that, just go ahead and jot that down and try to figure out what is the emotion behind the motivation that is pushing them forward. All right? So go ahead and do that exercise. This is really going to help you when you create your video sales letter. Once you get past this, everything else will be easier. All right?